So I get a lot of questions by up-and-coming combat sports athletes regarding how much time they should spend on their sport versus how much time they should spend on strength and conditioning, whether that would be strength and power training or endurance training. Now, before we get into that, success in any combat sport is a very, very multifaceted and complex topic. It is virtually impossible to attribute one single cause that leads to superior performance in something as complex as this. Now, due to it having so many entry points and components, it also means that there are so many ways to succeed. Now, had you been a track and field runner, a powerlifter, or an endurance runner, the components to success are pretty straightforward. I'm not saying it's easy, I am saying it's straightforward. But something as complex as combat sports, there are multiple ways to succeed in it. We will see combat sports athletes that make up for lack of skill with brute force and brute physical attributes, and we will see combat sports athletes that lack the physical attributes, so to speak, but make up with masterful tactics and strategy, skill in other words. And this is a relative matter, of course. Even the athletes that make up with, quote, brute force, they still need the bare minimum in skill. Otherwise you could have a NFL player or a powerlifter that would make even the strongest MMA fighters and wrestlers look like joke. You could take them and put them in a wrestling match and they would win. But that's not what happens, obviously. John Danaher commented on this topic very eloquently. He said that if you have two athletes and you increase their strength and endurance by 2 times, of course that is always desirable. Any increase in physical attributes is always desirable. But we have to look at where the highest return on investment is. So let's say you're a beginner wrestler 1 month into your sport. There is no way you will be able to convince me that the highest return on investment will be to practice deadlifts or squats. You should be practicing single leg entries, double leg finishes, sprawling, headlocks, angle changes and things like this. This will have 100 times higher return on investment than any strength training will ever have, at this point of your career at least. Does this mean that you should skip strength training and never do deadlifts or squats or bench presses? Not necessarily. My point is that if you only have the choice of, let's say, 4 sessions per week and you decide to do 2 strength training and 2 wrestling, that is wrong. You should go all in on your wrestling at this point of your career. But let's suppose that you have maxed out all of the wrestling sessions. You're going to every single practice there is and you're not missing anything. And on top of that, you decide to add 2 or 3 short sessions of strength training, let's say 40 minutes each, very summarized, basic, fundamental stuff like deadlifts and squats and pulls and bench presses, then it becomes productive, if it is done in a supplemental manner that does not replace any sport session. And the importance of skill and leverages versus brute force and physical attributes alone can be illustrated by a very simple experiment. Find yourself a doorknob and try to open the door close to the fulcrum. You will have to exert tons of effort to open this door. You may not even succeed at it and it will cost you a lot of energy. But go to the end of the handle and it will cost you so little. You just have to tap the thing and the door will open. And this is because you have incredible leverage and torque at this point. Now, every scenario in boxing, in wrestling, in jiu-jitsu, you will have this metaphorical endpoint of a door handle that requires the least amount of effort for the highest amount of effect. And what do most people do in there? They panic, they compensate with brute force, they are staying close to the metaphorical fulcrum in a wrestling scenario or a jiu-jitsu scenario all the time, and they just want to power through movements, and that costs a lot of energy. And when it doesn't work, they say, okay, the issue is my strength, the issue is my VO2 max, I need more 10k runs, I need more deadlifts and bench presses and things like this. And guess what? Bench presses and deadlifts and power cleans and things like this, they will be productive to your sport as a combat sports athlete, that is, but they have to be supplemental and they cannot be prioritized over skill and tactics. You would be surprised at just how much strength and power you will develop by only 2 strength and power sessions per week, each consisting of, let's say, 45 minutes. Going in there, focusing on the compound lifts, low repetitions, just go in there and do your thing and get out. You do not have to include 50 accessory exercises and train every single muscle in existence. You do not need to perform 40 rubber band exercises prior to your workout to quote, activate every single muscle. Just do a basic format of a warm-up, go to your compound lifts, work your core a little bit, and get out. Implement a form of progressive overload system where you work close to near max, but you do not burn yourself out every session, you leave some energy in the tank. And here is another thing, a lot of coaches, they pride themselves on, quote, exhausting their athletes, giving them a killer session, having them lie on the floor. Anybody can do that. That is not indicative of a good coach, a good strength training program. A good program will leave some battery in the tank for another day. It will increase your strength level without you noticing significantly that you are fatigued, so that by the time you go to your wrestling or MMA session, that you are fresh, that you have energy, that you don't even feel like you did a strength training workout, but yet your strength is increasing. The strength and power training that you do as an MMA fighter or wrestler is vastly different from a powerlifter or, let's say, Olympic weightlifter. And even powerlifters and Olympic weightlifters, they are super smart with their training. They are not meatheads that burn themselves out every session. They are very strategic and tactical with the intensity and volume prescriptions. So as a summary, we can say yes, strength and power training, it matters for combat sports athletes, but probably not for the reasons that you expect. If you expect to have some form of a secret advantage due to your strength and power training, that you are going to overpower more skilled opponents, you are out of your mind. But if you use strength and power training as a supplemental thing and you are already maxed out on your wrestling sessions, your MMA sessions, or whatever sport you are doing, then yes, strength and power training will yield some benefits. Because if everything else is equal, then the stronger wrestler will have the advantage. But then you have to make sure that everything else is equal in the first place. And this can be very evident in world championship matches, you know, the world class, with athletes that have already maxed out on their skill aspects. It's so equal, it's a matter of percentages. In these cases, then yes, the 5% advantage in VO2 max will yield high benefits. The 2% advantage in strength and power will yield high benefits. The 1 hour of extra sleep you get, yes, it will give you an advantage. In the world class, it is a battle of percentages.